The room fell completely still. She said it with a smile, her voice soft, rehearsed, trembling just enough to seem sincere. I promise to love you, Marcus. My name is Marcus. Neither is the best man's, not the efficient, not anyone in this hall of white linen and curated lighting. And still no one moved. I didn't flinch. Not then. My hands stayed folded in front of me steady. Her voice stuttered mid-sentence, a stammer that could have been emotion, could have been nerves, could have been the flicker of a split life spilling through the seams. She blinked once, twice. Her eyes met mine, wide but unreadable, and then she smiled again and kept reading. I promised to trust you, to stand by you. She didn't go back, didn't fix it, just rolled on like nothing had cracked the surface. Behind me, someone shifted. Chairs creaked. I caught the smallest flinch from the bridesmaid to her left, the one who helped her write those vows. The DJ's finger hesitated over the soundboard. The photographer lowered his camera half an inch, and my mother didn't clap when the final words came out. The officiant looked between us, a pause, a nod, and then the ceremony pushed forward like a train already too far downhill to stop. I leaned in just enough to brush my mouth beside her ear as we were declared husband and wife. You want to explain that name to me? She smiled at the crowd, whispered back, you heard wrong. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Her hand in mine felt colder than it should have. The photos afterward were efficient, posed, careful. Her laughter didn't quite reach her eyes. My smile held, not because I believed anything, but because I didn't want to give her a second performance to hide behind. During the reception, she made a toast, didn't stumble once. She said my name 3 times like a spell she was trying to recast, but no one was listening to the words anymore. They were watching our posture, watching me. I spoke to exactly 4 people that night, the best man, my mother, the officiant, and the hotel concierge. I asked the concierge a simple question. Who booked the honeymoon suite? He blinked, checked. Reservation was updated 3 days ago. 2 guests, same room. 2 guests. He showed me the names, hers and Marcus. I didn't react, just thanked him, said I'd handle the rest. Walked back into the ballroom where she was dancing with her father like nothing had slipped through her teeth less than an hour ago. I waited for her to come to me. She did, cheeks flushed, a little out of breath. You've been quiet. I've been watching. She smiled like I was joking. She always did that when she wanted to skip consequences. I need to talk to you, I said. She glanced around. Now, I nodded once. She followed me out onto the terrace, arms crossed tight. Look, I know what you think you heard. I read the reservation, 2 guests, Marcus. She blinked, too fast, too many times. It was a mistake. I know when the update was made. Silence. The wind picked up slightly. Her veil lifted, then fell back down over her shoulder like a white flag caught in slow motion. I didn't press, just looked at her, long enough that the silence became louder than anything she could have said. Then I turned back toward the ballroom. I'll handle checkout, I said without looking back, and I meant it in every possible way. She didn't follow me back inside. I didn't wait for her either. I moved through the reception like a man with somewhere to be, which in that moment was anywhere but under the spotlight she had cracked open. People were still dancing, laughing, raising glasses, but there was a static hum beneath it now, an edge behind the eyes of those who'd heard what I heard. Not everyone noticed, but those who did were watching her more carefully now, and me. My best man caught up to me near the bar, lowering his voice just enough. You okay? I looked at him. We'd been friends since high school. He knew what I looked like, angry. This wasn't that. I need a copy of the live stream recording, I said. He nodded without asking why. I didn't eat, didn't drink, just watched. Watched her work the room, switching gears like a campaign manager in a crisis. Every interaction was carefully measured, too affectionate, too easy, like she was trying to manually erase the audio from people's memories. But nerves don't rewrite names. Later, after the DJ's playlist had softened and the sparklers were passed out, I noticed the photographer standing off to the side, camera hanging at his hip. He wasn't shooting, he was staring. I walked over. You caught it? I asked. He hesitated, then nodded once. Audio's clean, wide shot, caught her face too. Good. You want it? Not yet. He seemed to understand. The cake was cut. The bouquet was thrown. She kept reaching for my hand when the cameras were on us. But her grip was light, uncertain, like she expected me to recoil. I let her hold it, let her think I hadn't already started pulling the threads loose. She caught me alone near the elevator later, her voice low, urgent. I need to explain. You will, I said, pressing the button. Just not tonight. You're blowing this out of proportion. That line hit differently, like a familiar script dusted off. This wasn't proportion, I said. It was your handwriting. She looked like she wanted to say more, but the elevator doors opened. I stepped in without her. I spent the next hour in the hotel business center requesting a certified copy of the marriage license, downloaded it, highlighted the name error, sent it to the attorney I'd already called during the reception. A voicemail returned. Immediate action possible. Clerical misfire legally, intentional emotionally. I didn't go back upstairs. Instead, I took a ride around the block, got air, let the quiet sink in. We weren't married, not really, not yet, and not for long. I returned to the hotel just past midnight. She was in the honeymoon suite wearing a silk robe she'd bought for the occasion. She opened the door with a smile stretched too thin. Her hair was up. Her eyes said she hadn't slept either. You left me alone all night, she said. You left yourself alone, I corrected. Her smile faltered. I was scared. I didn't know what you were thinking. I was thinking about Marcus. She looked away. It was last year I told you we stopped talking. You stopped talking about him. That's not the same. Silence again. I watched her, studied the way her robe belt was too tightly tied, like she needed something to stay put. She stepped forward. I want to fix this. I already filed. That stopped her. For annulment, I nodded. Clerical inconsistency, but we both know it wasn't an accident. She didn't cry, not yet. She just stood there still as furniture. I gave you the wedding, I said, but you never gave me the truth. Then I turned and walked to the guest room I'd booked separately. She didn't follow. She didn't knock on the guest room door that night. I lay on the unfamiliar mattress in my shirt and slacks, staring at the ceiling while the fan ticked unevenly. There was no grief, not in the traditional sense. No outburst waiting to erupt. Just something slow and metallic working its way through my chest, click by click, like the sound of a lock disengaging for good. At some point near dawn, I heard her in the hallway. Light steps, no heels. A pause outside my door, then nothing. The silence didn't hurt. It confirmed. By 7, I was showered and dressed, my ring sitting on the nightstand beside the keycard. I left the suite without checking if she was awake. Downstairs, the concierge greeted me with the same plastic smile. Mr. Langston, will your wife be checking out with you? I met his eyes. Separate travel arrangements. He nodded, no further questions. The drive back to the house we were supposed to leave for our honeymoon was brief and surgical. I called the florist on the way, canceled the bouquet hold. Then the decorator, we wouldn't need the reception pieces shipped. Then the caterer, freeze nothing. I wasn't scrambling. I was slicing cleanly, methodically. By mid-morning, the photos were beginning to appear online. Guests posting curated angles, filtered smiles. Captioned with words like love, forever, finally. I ignored them. The image I kept returning to wasn't posted. Her eyes, the second after she said the wrong name, I knew that look. It wasn't guilt. It was calculation slipping. By noon, the questions started. A text from my cousin, did I mishear the vows? Then the DJ, hey, do you want me to edit that moment out? I responded to neither. Instead, I pulled up our shared financials, froze the joint account, flagged the credit cards for review. It was preemptive, not punitive. I had no interest in retaliation, only in clarity. At 2:14 p.m., her maid of honor posted a cryptic story, a black screen with white text. Some mistakes cost more than they should. It was gone in under an hour, but not before a friend archived it and sent me the screenshot. I didn't ask for that. People just started sending things, quietly, like a shifting tide no longer in her favor. I got a call that afternoon from the officiant. He sounded hesitant. Was that intentional? She meant every word, I said. He didn't ask for clarification, just sighed. Let me know if you want a letter for the annulment record. I already have it, I said. From the video. That night, I returned to the house and found it undisturbed. She hadn't come home. Whether that was guilt, fear, or defiance, I didn't know or care. I walked into the living room, sat on the couch we'd picked out together. The one she said was too masculine, but then called perfect when the delivery guys left. I looked around. Nothing had changed, but everything had shifted. And that's when it really hit. This wasn't the fallout of a moment. She didn't misspeak. She rehearsed 2 sets of vows, and she used mine as the backup. The next morning I found a paper envelope wedged into the front door handle. No postage, no name, just folded once carefully like whoever left it wasn't sure if they were offering closure or a final push. Inside was a single printed message, a screenshot untrimmed, a text thread. It wasn't from her phone, it wasn't to mine. Marcus, you won't go through with it. I just need to prove I can. Timestamp 2 weeks before the wedding. I sat on the porch bench and read it again. No ambiguity, no misinterpretation, not emotional desperation, not an accident, not something that could be twisted into a mistake. She wasn't undecided, she was testing an outcome, not love. Leverage, I didn't need to know who sent it, the courier didn't matter. What mattered was the raw simplicity of her words, 10 of them, sharp enough to sever what was left. That day, I took the printed screenshot to my attorney. He reviewed it, asked no questions, just nodded once and said, "This will help." We finalized the annulment filing, 8 days from wedding to dissolution. Record time, he said, legally null, financially armored. She never responded to the filings, never tried to block it, which told me everything I still hadn't heard from her mouth. Back at the house, I gathered the framed engagement photos, the duplicate wedding invitation she kept taped to the fridge, the custom vows booklet she'd ordered with both our initials stamped in gold. I placed them all into a box, sealed it, and labeled it not with her name but a single word: return. I dropped it at her sister's door the next morning. That was when the calls stopped. Not immediately, but gradually. Her friends, the ones who were posting love-drenched captions just days before, started archiving their photos. Some unfollowed me. A few followed me instead. Digital lines were redrawn quietly, decisively. I didn't speak to her directly, not once after that night on the terrace, but word travels in reverse, and one thread reached me through a colleague who'd been at the wedding. He'd spoken to the hotel staff after I left. "Did you know she tried to access the joint account 2 hours after you checked out?" he said. "They said her card failed." I just nodded. I know, because I'd been ahead of her by exactly 1 day. Every move she could have made after the unraveling I'd already anticipated. I wasn't vindictive. I was just done giving her the benefit of hope. Hope is what she exploited when she said she needed to prove she could. Hope is what I cut off on purpose when I stopped speaking to her directly. Hope is what you reserve for people who mistake your name once, not for those who use the wrong one to test how far they can rewrite the script and still get applause. She didn't get applause. She got silence. And silence, when deliberate, echoes longer than anything else. 3 days after the annulment was processed, I received a formal letter from the venue. It was apologetic, polite, thanked me for choosing their space. And then in the final paragraph, almost as an afterthought, it read, "This is our first in-house annulment case. We've noted your request not to release the wedding album and will retain the files privately for the required 60-day holding period before deletion." There it was. Quiet exposure. No public broadcast, but no hiding either. I didn't reply. Just filed the letter away and sat at the kitchen table, fingers tracing the grain of the wood she'd once insisted was too rustic. She wanted everything curated: this house, the ceremony, the optics. Now her wedding didn't even get a finished album, just a bill. Later that night, I opened her social profile. Her last name had changed back, then disappeared altogether. She deposted a single photo from the wedding, one of herself solo on the dance floor. No caption, just comments turned off and a timestamp. The comments were off because too many people already knew what she said. The silence had turned into something she couldn't reframe. A friend sent me a screen recording before it was taken down. Another friend sent me a message that was clearly a forward, her maid of honor, unsent but screenshotted. I should have stopped her. She wasn't in it for the marriage. She was just trying to prove something to someone. Maybe not even to Marcus, maybe just to herself. There was that word again, prove. She wasn't building a life, she was staging a milestone, a kind of performance that required an audience and a title but not a future. I didn't feel rage anymore, just an odd sort of clarity, like realizing the house you've lived in has faulty wiring and every flicker of light was always borrowed time. The next morning, I signed the final financial release forms. My attorney confirmed she hadn't contested anything. The joint account stayed closed. The charges she'd made in the days leading up to the wedding, dresses, hair trials, a non-refundable deposit for a couple's retreat were her responsibility now. I paid none of it. I didn't block her. That would have implied I was still reacting. Instead, I let the line stay open and unused. It wasn't about power. It was about resolve. On the seventh day, I walked into the living room and looked at the blank space where our engagement canvas had hung. I hadn't replaced it yet. Not because I couldn't, because I didn't want to rush into rebuilding something before fully understanding what had broken. Not the canvas, me, but the cracks weren't raw anymore. They were forming edges. And edges, sharp and earned, are better than illusions stretched thin. 2 weeks after the annulment finalized, I got an email from the hotel. No subject line, no explanation, just an attached PDF labeled Reservation Log Amended History. It showed the exact timeline. The original honeymoon booking, made 6 months prior, listed a single guest, her. Then 2 weeks before the wedding, the reservation was modified. A second name added, Marcus. But what stood out wasn't just the change. It was the note. Guest has requested early check-in for Mr. Marcus, last name redacted, to prepare a surprise. She had planned for him to be there. Not before, not long ago, days before the vows. This wasn't a forgotten name. It was a rehearsal that never got canceled. I didn't forward the file, didn't respond. I printed it, read it once more under the dull kitchen light, then slid it into a drawer already holding the copy of her vows and the annulment certification. A small archive, not for revenge, just for remembrance. By then, the social circles had shifted noticeably. The venue quietly removed her tagged photos from their page. The dress shop never posted the usual congratulations. A local influencer, mutual friend, unfortunately posted a vague musing on weddings built on dares instead of devotion. The comments weren't kind. She deactivated for a few days after that. I didn't gloat. I didn't message anyone, but the ripple was real. And I watched it move, silent and steady. A mutual friend eventually reached out. The message was short. Marcus wasn't some mistake, he was her fallback plan. He said it out loud at a party. She was proving a point, not making a choice. That was the phrase that hit harder than anything, not making a choice, because I wasn't chosen, I was staged. I revisited moments I'd ignored. Her absences, the late-night text she'd claimed was a co-worker. The times I'd asked gently about her hesitation and she'd turned it back on me. You're just overthinking, don't ruin this. It wasn't sabotage. It was survival, and I'd failed to read it in time. The next morning I canceled the last wedding-related holdout, the personalized email domain we were going to use for our future joint projects. It had our initials. She had said it made us look unified. Now it made me nauseous. I didn't announce it, just let it expire. Let it disappear the way her commitment had, quietly, deliberately, and without apology. That night I made one more call to the photographer. He answered quickly. Still want the files withheld? Yes, but I have one more request. Go ahead. If anyone else asks for them, especially her, don't release. I'll cover the holding fee. He paused. Consider it done. For what it's worth, you handled this like a pro. I didn't respond. Compliments were weightless now, but I did close the call with one sentence. She wanted a wedding. I wanted a life. That's the difference. Then I hung up and got back to it, my real life, the one without a script. I didn't hear from her for a month, not directly, but she left footprints, digital, subtle, meant to feel accidental. A playlist update on the shared music account, still active under my name, titled Should Have Been Enough. An Amazon return receipt forwarded to my inbox by mistake, addressed to her new place. And once a view notification from the wedding album portal. She didn't download anything, she just looked. She knew I'd see it. That was her way, not confrontation, performance. Always layered in just enough ambiguity to deny intent. I left it all alone. The smart part of me wanted to respond, not emotionally, strategically, just to close the loop. But the sharper part of me had already done that, in the form of silence. In letting the paperwork speak where my words no longer had to. She didn't get the last word. She got the last echo. A hollow version of what she tried to build with borrowed promises. Meanwhile, word kept unraveling. A guest who'd been seated in the third row reached out through LinkedIn. Polite, corporate, clearly torn between concern and curiosity. I never said anything at the time, but I heard it. We all did. I just wanted to say, I admire how you handled everything. Most people would have lost it. I didn't respond to that either, because it wasn't praise I needed. It was peace. And peace doesn't arrive through confirmation. It comes from endurance. Eventually, I asked myself a question I hadn't dared to until then. What would have happened if she hadn't slipped? If she'd said the right name, hit all her marks, smiled through the lies? Would I have known? Would I have spent years building a life on a fault line? That was the quiet horror buried beneath everything, not the betrayal itself, but the realization that I might have missed it entirely if the truth hadn't outrun her control. The wrong name saved me, not in a dramatic, movie-ending way, but in a surgical, necessary way. One slip exposed an entire architecture of deception, emotional, financial, strategic. Her game wasn't spontaneous, it was layered. Marcus wasn't a fling, he was a fallback, an option she kept warm while she tested the optics of something more respectable. Me, respectable, reliable, resilient. I became the man who made sense on paper. She just didn't count on the fact that I was watching the fine print too. That's the part she never understood. I wasn't the backup plan, I was the safeguard. And once I realized that, walking away wasn't weakness. It was defense, clean, final, absolute. 3 weeks after the silence settled into something more permanent, her maid of honor resurfaced, this time in my inbox. Subject line: I should have said something sooner. The body was short. No apologies, just a cold upload link and one sentence. You deserve to know she rehearsed the vows with both names. The video file opened to a dim living room, grainy, phone propped against a candle. She was sitting on the couch in her robe, barefoot, holding a printed draft in both hands, reading softly. She said my name once. Then Marcus S. Didn't flinch either time, just kept going, like she was testing which version felt more powerful in her mouth. She laughed partway through one line. This part sounds better with Marcus, more syllables. That line didn't make it to the altar, but her intention did. I didn't cry, I didn't rewind. I just closed the window and backed up the file, adding it to the private archive, my version of a memory box. Not for court, not for confrontation. Just to remind myself what delusion looks like when it's dressed in silk and ceremony. The same day, a venue story surfaced, a behind-the-scenes post that highlighted firsts in wedding history. Buried near the bottom, a single line stood out. Our first in-house annulment, resolved in under 10 days. A reminder that even the most beautiful settings can't always rewrite a story already written. No names, no tags, but the photo beneath the caption showed a table centerpiece from our reception. The custom name card I'd designed still visible. Mine, not hers. Later that week, a mutual acquaintance reached out. She'd seen her at a cafe, alone, unrecognizable. She looked different, like she was trying not to be noticed. Said she was taking time to reset. She didn't mention you. Of course she didn't, I said. She doesn't tell stories she can't control. The acquaintance laughed, but it wasn't humor. You dodged something deep. That night I walked through the house and made a list. Not a revenge list, a correction list. Everything she'd chosen, every trace of her in the daycare, the cabinets, the linen colors. Things that once felt like compromises now felt like planted flags. By the end of the night, I'd boxed up half the kitchen. Donated it the next morning. Cleared the office bookshelf of the curated us, items she'd arranged in the exact color palette she used for the wedding. And still, I kept one thing. The draft of our joint vows, the original before her edits, her handwriting next to mine. We had written them together on a rainy evening, cross-legged on the floor, eating takeout and laughing too easily. It was a good memory, and I needed to remember that even false foundations can hold real moments. Briefly. But that didn't make them safe to build on. By the 6th week, the silence had calcified into something permanent. No late-night texts, no carefully phrased apologies disguised as questions. She had gone quiet, not out of respect, but out of calculation. She understood now that I wasn't going to reopen a door just because she stood outside it long enough. One afternoon, my attorney called to confirm final account closures. She de-signed off on everything without comment. No contest. No delay. Cleanest exit I've seen in a while, he said. Unusual for something that started with that level of pageantry. I said nothing. But I remembered her smile when she walked down the aisle, remembered how steady her hands were. That's what chilled me most, not the mistake, but the mastery. She hadn't flinched until the truth slipped out. In the weeks that followed, the rest of the wedding circle fractured naturally. Invitations to couples' dinners dried up. One friend unfollowed both of us. Another sent a careful message. I still care about her, but what she did, it was wrong. I'm sorry we didn't say anything then. I didn't hold it against them. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't always come with villains. Sometimes it's just people looking the other way because the moment feels too sharp to touch. Then one Saturday morning, a courier dropped off a small padded envelope. No return address. Inside, my ring. No note. No explanation. Just the weight of something returned too late to matter. I left it on the table for 3 days. Not because I needed time, but because I didn't. On the 4th day, I slipped it into a drawer beside the wedding license with the error, the video file of her rehearsal, and the screen captures of her messages to Marcus. A quiet archive of things undone. I didn't need justice. I already had the truth. The final thread came from an unexpected place, a client of mine who'd been a guest. She ran a boutique that had contributed small favors for the reception. She emailed me to say thank you, and then she added, "I've done over 200 weddings. Yours was the first where the groom never lost composure, even when everything shifted. That's not something people forget." I didn't respond, but I let the words sit, because there was a difference between leaving someone and ending something. She left when the performance collapsed. I ended it when I realized the performance was all there ever was. I never told anyone what I did with her ring, not because it was some grand act of closure, but because silence felt more appropriate. She had returned mine without ceremony, almost like a receipt being settled. So I chose not to match the gesture. Instead, I took hers, still in its velvet box, untouched since the morning of the annulment, and drove it to a consignment jeweler 2 towns over. Not local. No risk of mutual friends spotting it on a stranger's hand and starting conversations neither of us deserved. The jeweler opened the box, glanced inside, and nodded. Beautiful stone, classic cut, sentimental, not anymore. He didn't ask further, took it into the back, made an offer, and handed me a receipt. I didn't negotiate, just signed, took the cash, and left. That night I bought nothing. I didn't treat myself, didn't frame the act as some symbolic reset. I just went home and sat on the edge of the stripped bed, her monogrammed pillow already boxed up, and let the quiet settle again. Let it be plain. This wasn't revenge, it was removal. By now her digital presence had dwindled. No updates, no stories. The last of our mutual vendors had stopped tagging her. One even replaced a wedding highlight post with a different couple, same venue, reused captions. No mention of her at all. I kept expecting someone, her, Marcus, maybe one of their defenders, to try to reclaim the narrative, to post something cryptic or self-righteous, but none came, and I realized why. There was nothing for her to win. She hadn't just lost a wedding. She'd lost the version of herself that believed she could outmaneuver reality, that she could balance 2 lives without consequence, that slipping the wrong name would be written off as nerves instead of indictment. The fantasy collapsed on impact. And I hadn't raised my voice, hadn't dragged her publicly, hadn't staged a scene. I just stepped out of frame. That's what stunned people, not the speed, not the strategy, but the refusal to give her another script. She had the dress, the guests, the cake, the song, but she didn't get the story. I did. And I ended it before she could revise the ending. She thought the ring sealed it. She thought walking down the aisle meant she'd written the story, closed the deal. She thought I would fix her mistake for her, carry her over the threshold, and pretend the slip never happened. That I'd protect the version of events she could live with. She underestimated my silence. 3 days after the annulment finalized, I requested a certified duplicate of the marriage license, this time with a notarized correction. Vows publicly stated under incorrect name of alternate male guest. Ceremony concluded but legally voided same week. No license issued. It was legal language. But it read like a verdict. I had it printed, framed, and mailed, not to her apartment, to her workplace. Direct signature required. She worked in PR, she knew what it meant. Not a threat, just a record, a line in ink she couldn't walk back. 2 days later, her name disappeared from the agency S About Us page. No resignation post, no farewell message, just gone. A friend of hers, former friend maybe, posted a message that same week. Some of us learned that branding isn't identity. And consequences aren't character assassination, they're just overdue. She deleted her wedding registry. The photographer confirmed she emailed him twice asking for the photos. Both times he declined per my written directive. Non-releasable unless mutually requested. She didn't ask me, because by then she knew I wouldn't answer. Instead, I made one more request. The venue, the florist, the DJ. Each received a letter, professional, quiet, signed. Please remove all promotional use of our event effective immediately. I no longer grant image or testimonial rights. They complied within 48 hours. Every digital trace of our wedding, her curated vision, her staged perfection disappeared. Not with drama, with precision. She had the dress, the vows, the ring, but the story, that was mine. And I ended it not with a fight, but with a document, a deletion, and a silence she could never rewrite. Null and void.